Well, it has to. It has to be an opposition to everything wrong that is done. But it couldn't be all wrong things happening. Some good things should be happening too. And in this case, there's nothing to oppose to. Economic measures. Very often, corruption is approached by trying to abolish the very reason of its existence. The ideology behind this approach is very simple. If there is a licensing regime involved, then in order for a business person to receive a license, he or she must interact with the public service. In this process of interaction, bribes could be given and taken. If there is no licensing regime, there is no need for a bribe to be given and taken. It is a very valid approach. It was tested times and again since the beginning of the 90s, because it was in the background of the so-called Washington Consensus. But it is certainly not sufficient, because if we take its logic to the end, it would mean that if there is no state regulation, there will be no corruption. Well, there may be no corruption, but there will also be no state, which is hardly a good thing to happen. Another approach which is quite important, and this is what we are trying to do in the moment in our project, and this is where the media could play a very strong role. It's the values-based approach. The approach in which the media are trying to put the emphasis on certain societal values, trying to promote these values and trying to underline how unacceptable the corrupt behavior is. Now, this is very often done also by the governments. And sometimes the media have a very natural aversion, trying not to get involved in propaganda efforts. But at the end of the day, it is a good propaganda. We are talking here about important issues. I mean, media wouldn't have problems in getting involved into anti-smoking campaigns or campaigns that are against the traffic violations. Why should they have a problem getting involved in another government policy that is even more important than I don't know, traffic violations? I don't see a logical reason for that, though I can see a lot of emotional arguments against it and a lot of mistrust involved. But ultimately, if we are trying to promote a culture of integrity in the society, we cannot do that without the media. And this is a huge responsibility. And lastly, we have to decide between going in two distinctly different directions. Well, they are usually expressed as compliance-based approach or integrity-based approach, as approach based on law enforcement and approach based on softer measures aiming at building integrity. And here we have a very interesting phenomenon. Basically everyone, if you look at the media, starting from the media and finishing with the European Union, they want to see convictions. Society wants to see people behind bars. This is very important, of course, but if corruption in a country is really systemic, if you have a real serious problem with corruption, then probably you have many people involved in it. Could you imprison everyone? Not likely. Trying to build the integrity in the public service and in the society and in the way business is done sometimes requires more time, and it's definitely less interesting for the society, and it's definitely less interesting for the media, but it may nevertheless be extremely important long term. Of course, that doesn't mean that law enforcement should be neglected. On the contrary, it is very important that thieves go to jail. But then again, sending everyone to jail is rather unrealistic. Okay, I have prepared quite a long presentation, but I know that there are many other colleagues who would like, that there are other colleagues, not many, but there are other colleagues who are to speak too and who are about to give you something that's quite interesting for your professional work too. So I would like just to put an emphasis again on these two last approaches to fighting corruption that I mentioned: law enforcement and integrity. I'm saying that among all because I have been in the position of a public servant when he had to meet journalists, talk to journalists, and answer to questions such as, do you really think that people would stop being corrupt if you train them? Very valid question. No, I don't. I don't think that people will stop being corrupt because they're newly trained. I believe, however, that very often people get involved in corruption because of ignorance. Take, for instance, the issue of conflicts of interest. Not corruption by no means. It's a situation where you have a personal interest interfering with a public duty. Not necessarily that you would choose the personal interest, you may also choose the public duty. Still, conflict of interest, if mismanaged, is a situation that may cause corruption. Now, if people don't know how to manage conflicts of interest, how could they make the right decision in a difficult situation? It's a bit like driving. You need to actually know and have not just know the law on driving, but you have to possess specific skills on how to react in certain environment, how to react when you see a red light, how to react when you see a yellow light on the traffic lights. Do you have to push the accelerator when you see traffic yellow light, or push the brakes? These are all specific skills that can be taught, that may be taught, that must be taught, if we want people to be ethically competent and to avoid difficult situations that could lead them to corruption. And these are all things that deserve to be applauded, not ridiculed. Because these are important measures that may not be as fancy as sending a prime minister to jail, but they are certainly going to address the problem in its roots. On the other hand, law enforcement obviously has to be also taken seriously. The issue of reporting cases of corruption before the case has gone to court was already underlined in the morning, and the dangers associated with that. So you know what are the dangers of reporting these kind of cases. I would like just to share with you something interesting which happened in my country literally several weeks ago. Since the beginning of 2011, Bulgaria is in a horrible turmoil because information was leaked out to the media from recorded conversations of high-level officials, including the Prime Minister, Minister of Interior, Minister of Finance, Deputy Minister of Finance, and the head of the Customs Administration. And this information that was leaked actually served as a horrible blow. It was an attack against the government, as a result of which the trust in government fell down with, I think, more than 10% for a period of 1 month. Did the government deserve that? I don't know. They started to do something to fight corruption. Maybe they were not the most effective ones, and surely there are some of them that are not quite white angels. But still, we witnessed how a leak of information from an ongoing criminal investigation to the media totally destroyed public trust in several leading politicians and undermines the whole trust in government in a moment. That can't be good. I mean, whatever happens, this cannot be a good thing. If there is someone who has done something wrong, this person should be investigated, prosecuted, convicted, sent to jail. But working this way, around the law, effectively using and abusing the media in order to achieve a political result, that was pretty horrible. And it showed how actually even the best of intentions, if there were best intentions at all, could lead to most dire consequences. Okay. You all have the presentations, or if you don't have the presentations, you will be able to see them at the new anti-corruption HR, Antikorupcija HR website. So I'm not going to read all the slides that I have prepared for you, but I would be very happy to answer some questions if you have any. Thank you for your attention.